Boo Carter to Colorado is getting very real. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So go over to FanDuel and make sure to swing back over here to Locked On Buffs because we're brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage because things are always interesting in Boulder, and Boo Carter is a prime example of this. So for those of you who may or may not remember, brief history on Boo Carter, 4-star athlete out of Tennessee, played safety, four-star athlete out of Tennessee from the 2024 class, came down to Colorado, came down to Tennessee, came down to Michigan. Colorado was in on him. He was kind of viewed as a two-way potential guy, and ultimately he's a Chattanooga kid, if I'm not mistaken. Or says he's from Cleveland, Tennessee. So from that Tennessee area, or from the state of Tennessee, stayed home, played for the Vols, was a freshman All-American, All-SEC honors, returned punts, was a really good defensive back, and was expected to play offense this next year for the Vols. And all of a sudden, a report surfaced that he's been missing team events and was called out by the leadership. And all of a sudden, it's very unclear what his future with the program is. According to a report by CBS Sports, it's not a Nico situation, and I'll elaborate on that later. But his future with the program is uncertain. And the report also says, and I quote, "Should the situation end up with Carter not returning to Tennessee, Colorado would be a school to watch as a potential destination," according to CBS Sports. The Buffaloes were a factor in his high school recruitment and would likely afford him the opportunity to play on both sides of the ball, which he did in high school, and sparingly in spring practice for the Vols. Carter also returned punts for the Vols as a freshman. So yes, like I said in my open, there's some inklings, there's some happenings, right? Boo Carter coming to Boulder is a possibility. Now, this is where it gets complicated. And I wrote about this over at Athlon Sports if you guys want to read more about it. Obviously, the transfer portal is not open right now, at least not in the sense that most people think. There is a transfer portal open from July. Let's see. Let me pull up the dates to make sure I don't butcher this. There is a portal open from July 7th to August 15th. That being said, it is the NCAA Committee on Legislation Relief issued the waiver that allows designated players to enter the portal in that time span. The report also said that those players are typically walk-ons or back end of the roster scholarship players. So probably not Boo Carter. The other way that he can end up at Boulder is, at least this is me assuming, right? I think it's very much a gray area these days. I think the NCAA is a sham of its former self. They have literally no power anymore. And they pretty much need executive orders from the president that may or may not pass to really give them power anyway, because people just sue them and then they lose. So there's two possibilities, and these are potential possibilities. I don't know for certain if these are concrete ways or avenues for Boo Carter to leave the program. For one, if he's dismissed from the program, which I saw that Josh Heupel, the Tennessee head coach, is going to talk about him on July 29th, or at least he's expected to. If he's no longer with the program, that means he's dismissed. Well, he could enroll anywhere as a student, right? It's going to be, it'll be close. It'll be a bind. But if you guys remember, Juwan Mitchell from Arizona State, he was dismissed. Let me pull up the date here. He was dismissed from the team on August 7th, right? This was after practice on a Monday. Coach Gillingham said Juwan Mitchell is no longer with the team, blah, 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 all that jazz. In August, right? The college football season starts in August. All of a sudden, you fast forward like a week or so, Juwan Mitchell's playing for the Buffs, right? He's in well-off media videos, and he's suiting up for Colorado by week 2 or 3. So if he's dismissed, there's obviously an avenue there. Or he could go the Jake Retzlaff route and not be dismissed, I guess. Jake Retzlaff wasn't dismissed. Now, obviously, I'm not saying there's legal issues here with Boo Carter. It seems like there's been some indifferences between him and the team leadership, which I'll get to in a little bit. But Jake Retzloff left the program on his own accord, right? He could have stayed at BYU, but chose not to because he was going to be facing a 7-game suspension for having premarital sex, which was a violation of the honor code. So he unenrolls as a student, walks on to Tulane. Kind of a tongue twister there. Boo Carter, from my understanding, as someone who was in college moons ago, I'm 26. Actually, I'm 25. Don't let me age myself yet. You could probably transfer. It's probably close, right? And I'm sure that they might move the process along quicker for an athlete. But he can unenroll from Tennessee and probably end up at Colorado. I feel like that's a reliable sort of path. The player that I mentioned yesterday did it from, I believe it was Xavier Lucas, went from Wisconsin to Miami. He was a guy that was wanting to transfer. They didn't allow him to transfer, and all of a sudden, he's at Miami because he unenrolled as a student. I do think that's kind of a hack. I don't really know what the NCAA could do to that, because if they're choosing to walk on, they're just student. Like if they unenroll as a student, they're students at that point, right? They are using their powers as students to help them with sports. And I talked about this yesterday. Back in the day, I covered Stanford for Sports Illustrated, and they had a safety by the name of Patrick Field, who was actually pretty good. Played for Oklahoma, was a part of those playoff teams. And he graduates from Oklahoma, really bright guy, and transfers to Stanford because he was getting his master's. So he's a grad student. And Stanford at the time wasn't taking transfers. So he had already got into the school and then was like, hey, Coach Shaw, I played football for Oklahoma. I would like to play. And then he played at Stanford. So it is possible. It has happened before. Now, there's a lot of things that still need to unfold. What about Boo Carter do we know? Right, this is what he brings to the table, because I'm going to get to the cons of Boo Carter, or sort of the baggage he brings. The pros, I mean, really good corner, or defensive back. He's kind of a nickel guy that can play all over. Very versatile athlete, can obviously return punts or kicks, and that was one of the things that Coach Prime said he wanted more of last season, was more dynamicism in the punt return, kick return game. And then he also can play wide receiver or running back. So you're getting a versatile athlete to... You're not going to replace Travis Hunter. I don't think anyone in college football can be Travis Hunter. But it doesn't hurt to have a gadget guy who could do a little bit of everything, right? And I think Boo Carter would be the next best thing for Travis Hunter. And you don't need to have a Travis Hunter every year. But if you have guys who could do it, why would you not do it, right? Colorado has obviously had success. They produced the Heisman winner, Blitnikoff winner, should have won the Jim Thorpe Award, won the Defensive Player of the Year award, Paul Hornung Award, twice, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Like they've done it, right? So Boo Carter, the template is here. It's just a matter of, does he leave Tennessee, or do things get resolved in Knoxville? Now, let's be cautious here. Just because Boo Carter is a good player and can do a lot of things, there is some baggage. I'm going to talk about that in a quick second, but first, a quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs, it's brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about the baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or some soccer, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following all the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you could get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. Again, bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's talk Boo Carter, baggage, cons, if you will. This isn't a segment meant to shoot down a young man. This is a segment to highlight sort of what's wrong, what's going on behind the closed doors that raise some red flags, right? We know Deion Sanders runs a tight ship. There's been minimal trouble, if any, at Colorado. I think the only one I could think of is Bishop Thomas, and he just wasn't handling school stuff in the classroom. And I think that's about it, right? I think Cormani McLean, same thing. Former blue chip guy that wasn't handling stuff all around, but there's been no legal issues. There's been none of that. Same thing with Boo Carter, no legal issues. It's just he is experiencing some things and has had, I think he's doing things his way, and I don't think it's the right things to do. Let's just put it that way. According to CBS, Carter was confronted by team leaders. Sources told CBS that the altercation occurred on July 16th between Carter and his teammates, and then Carter has not been with the team since. They said it's not an NIL situation, revenue share compensation, no money stuff. It's basically he's pissed that the leadership council called him out for violating multiple team rules, and so he's been away with the team. There was rumors that he's been in California, so there's that. And then this also another red flag, and I don't know how many of you follow the NBA or the NBA draft, but Carter, well, let's just go with the representation factor. There's a quote in here from his former representation, I guess now, Isaac Connor, who is now his former agent, and his now former agent said, quote, "I did represent Boo. However, I'm not sure I still do. He has not been responsive, and so has his mother. They posted something about Omar Cooper representing him and advising him now." If you don't know the name Omar Cooper, he was probably the biggest dummy or biggest villain, if you will, of the NBA draft. He represents Ace Bailey, who was at one point projected to be the number 2 pick, kind of pushed for that number 1 pick for Cooper Flag. And all of a sudden, the pre-draft process rolls around. Ace Bailey goes to the combine, measures in at 6'7" after being listed at 6'10", which that's not Cooper's fault. But then he refused to interview with any other team and was basically dodging teams who already had established stars because he wanted to go to a team that had a path to being a superstar. And then the teams were the Washington Wizards, the Brooklyn Nets, and there's another one that's slipping my mind that were bad, right? So there's that. He's also the father of Sharif Cooper, who played at Auburn, basically advised his son to do some questionable things with his career and eligibility, and now his son is no longer in the NBA, right? So I don't love his representation situation. Anytime you don't handle things professionally, I think that's a red flag. Anytime you sort of, I guess, skip out on, like, you got to communicate, right? And Deion Sanders isn't going to play these games, and I think that'd be a really difficult discussion to have for Deion Sanders and Boo Carter, because Coach Prime runs a tight ship, and he's not going to let someone come into the locker room and corrupt his program. He has a program built on running it like a pro organization. He has a program built on love, and he has a program built on sort of understanding, like, hey, we're here to do a job. And if you're not doing your job, Colorado isn't the place for you, right? He runs a tight ship. I'm going to say that again. So that's the baggage that comes with Boo Carter, right? He's obviously is having some accountability issues, whatever violations he committed. He didn't like that his team council members called him out. He also kind of left his previous agent high and dry, and now he's represented by someone in Omar Cooper, who I think, let's just say Omar Cooper did not do himself any favors in the pre-draft process for the NBA. So there's that, right? The NBA, there was reports that Omar was demanding to be paid to do interviews. Obviously, he advised Ace Bailey to not go to certain teams and not participate in any of the pre-draft process. So things got a little complicated, I think you could say. That being said, Boo Carter's a really good player. So if Coach Prime and company are confident enough that, like, hey, Boo Carter's going to come to Boulder, put in the work, not be a distraction, not try to hold them hostage for money or something, then I think you could justify taking that chance. But if you even have the slightest doubt of his motivations, his effort level, his ability to mesh with the players, mesh with the team, sort of alter the chemistry, you don't do it, right? And it's as simple as that. You don't do something that can mess up what you have going, because other than that, if you do, life's going to get hard. Life's going to get difficult, and you could have this situation all over again next year. So we will stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated every step of the way, because that's what I do over here on Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Colorado trying to flip a blue chip recruit from a Big 12 rival. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you're following along so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage, whether it's Boo Carter, Deion Sanders' return, whatever it is, previewing Georgia Tech. We got it all over here. And I'm trying to pull up what we need to discuss next because my phone just died. And so, as pointed out, as reported by our good friend John Garcia, who's with Rivals /On3, I don't know what their entity is called anymore. It's very confusing. But former Locked On Buffs co-host, the Buffs, they are pushing for one of the better receivers in the country. His name is Brian Hamilton, and he's currently committed, but they're trying to flip him. He says they're trying to get me to flip. They think I'm going to be a great fit there for their offense and even compare me to Jimmy Horn. Says they're trying to set up an official visit before December. So here's what you need to know about Brian Hamilton, because obviously I think once Colorado zeroes in on a recruit, things get intense, right? He's currently committed to Pitt. He's not committed to Kansas State. I don't know why I said that. I apologize. Kansas State is also trying to flip him. He's a guy who he's a quick dude from Florida. You know that's Coach Prime's type. If Coach Prime had a type, from Tampa, Florida, that is. Trying to pull up his measurables here. Track and field guy, multi-sport athlete, has that Florida speed, 5'11", 165. So I'd say he has that LeJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn build. This past year, 50 catches for 818 yards, 16.4 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns, and then he also had a kickoff return for a touchdown on special teams as well. Dynamic guy that can do a little bit of everything. And again, Colorado's recruiting class, I don't think it's where they want it to be. That being said, I think it's going to ramp up here pretty quick, right? I do think the Buffs are going to be making some moves anytime now. Currently ranks 8th in the country, according to 24/7. They have 9 commits, linebacker, safety, linebacker, tight end, offensive tackle, safety, linebacker, athlete, and D'Amato Pecker Jr., JUCO guy, and Maurice Williams. So they don't have any skill position players on offense at this time. I guess tight end kind of, but no receivers, no running backs. And they brought in a slew of receivers this past class. I get that. They're always good at bringing in transfer receivers. That being said, the transfer portal works both ways, right? And I'm not saying that I don't want those guys to hang around in Boulder, but if you said, hey, Kevin, do you expect Colorado to return every single receiver on the roster next season? It'd be hard to tell you I do, because that's just not how college football works these days. So I do think that there's going to be a little bit more of a push for him. One, Florida is Coach Prime's domain. He loves a good Florida recruit. 2, I mean, let's just say the obvious out loud. Yes, they need receiver talent. Yes, he's a talented guy. They also need people, or want people, who have a connection. I won't say they want guys who are connected to this team, but Pat Narduzzi, Deion Sanders, little rivalry, remember? Remember when Pat Narduzzi called out Deion Sanders for how he's building his roster through the transfer portal? Yeah, it'll get complicated. It's one of those things where I think Deion Sanders, anytime there is some overlap, I don't think he'd mind throwing it in the face of Pat Narduzzi. So that's what you need to know about the Buffs right now. Let me see if there's any recruiting stuff that I missed to tell you guys, because, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in this world, in this recruiting world, and the Buffs are obviously, they're trying to get active, right? And I think with Deion Sanders back, things are getting active. Here's a report about John as well that he also sent to me and said, hey, listen, we want, not him, Colorado, that is. There's top guys in Florida that are in the mix, or that are uncommitted. Breck College, who took a bunch of visits. He took a visit to Colorado, USC, Georgia, Miami, and Oklahoma. They're all in the thick of things. But currently it looks like other programs are leading for his recruitment. But it says who could rule out the home state option in Colorado. He's a Colorado transplant. So Colorado has a chance there. And other than that, the Buffs are still looking for guys. I think Colorado is more of a flip team. So like I said, it's flipness. So we're going to start seeing Colorado offer guys who are committed elsewhere. And I think that Deion Sanders and his staff are going to upset some people with that. And that's just how the business goes. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. I will see you guys tomorrow.